Hello and welcome to La Excellence Hyderabad and Bengaluru. This is the daily news analysis for 17th May 2020. The online live general studies batch for 2021 for prelims cum mains has started. Please direct your queries to the numbers given below. These are the important articles that we will discuss today. Now let's move on to our discussion. So the first article for our discussion has the title Government Throws Open Defense Production and Coal Sectors. The syllabus connection has been listed here for your benefit. Please have a look. The issue is related to Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan or ABA, and the dimension is related to the fourth tranche of the announcements that have been given under ABA. So Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is basically the economic reforms package that has been launched by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in order to create a self-sustaining and self-reliant India in the wake of COVID-19 disaster. COVID-19 has shut down almost all economies. It has brought the economies to a standstill, and we want to revive our economy. And to do so, we have launched this Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan or ABA. The present article has the following essence. It aims to bring in structural reforms. The fourth tranche of announcements made under Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, fourth tranche in the sense, the reforms are basically given in tranches or installments, first tranche, second tranche and so on. So under the fourth tranche, what we are focusing on is to bring structural reforms in strategic sectors like airspace, coal mining, space and atomic energy, defense production and so on. And by bringing these structural reforms, we are hoping that it will attract investment into our country, both domestic and foreign. And once this investment comes in, it is going to boost in employment and growth. So the government has chosen several strategic sectors like I just mentioned, for example, defense production, coal mining, space, atomic energy and so on. And in each of these sectors, the government, instead of giving stimulus packages or infusion of capital, what it did was it went for structural reforms. And by bringing these reforms, it wanted to simplify the policies that were there, simplify the laws that were there, simplify the rules that were there, so that it would be easy for the private players, both internal and external, to come into this sector, to venture into these sectors and create employment and growth. So this article starts out by saying how this fourth tranche of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is focused more on structural reforms as and when opposed to stimulus packages. The previous tranches of ABA or Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan basically focused on stimulus packages. Now this fourth tranche is more focused on creating structural reforms. So in relation to the defense sector, the main aim was to create an environment for the indigenization of the defense production, and in order to do so, the reforms basically include banning of the import of some weapons. So when you ban the import of these defense weapons from outside to India, then what we do is we create the weapons within India itself. So this is how we are creating an environment for the indigenization of defense. We have also stopped the importing of the spare parts. Now these spare parts which are required for the defense industry will also be manufactured within India only. And we have increased the FDI limit from the defense manufacturing from 49% to 74%. And this increase in the FDI limit will increase investment in this particular sector. So these are the steps that have been taken in the defense sector. Now come to the coal sector. In the coal sector, we have made sure that indigenous production of coal is going to increase. In order to do this, we are basically having some kind of curbs or bans on the import of coal. As we all know, India imports a lot of coal, and some restrictions are based on this kind of import so that people will start producing coal within the country. And in order to do so, there is a new rule which has come up. This new rule basically says that any private player can bid for a coal mine and sell the coal that he has obtained from the coal mine in any open market. And this is an incentive for the coal players, private players in the coal sector as such. In addition to this, in relation to the social sector like health, housing and so on, viability gap funding of about 8,100 crores is being infused, and this will boost private investment in the social sector. In addition to all these things, selectively we have opened up our atomic energy sector and the space sector, so that private investment is going to increase, especially private domestic investment is going to increase. So we are trying to boost all these sectors by bringing these structural reforms in each of these sectors by simplifying the rules as such. Now there is a simple criticism which is related to it. So what experts are saying is that India is trying to bring in those reforms, the government is trying to bring in those reforms which are not easy, which usually face some kind of backlash. Like for example, if you want to open up the atomic energy sector or the space sector, this creates a lot of backlash in the society, because these are the sectors which are supposed to be the exclusive hold of the state for security purposes, of course, for national security purposes, for the security of life of the countrymen as such. Now, because using this COVID-19 situation, the government is basically pushing forward to opening these sectors, into opening these sectors, which is not good for the economy, is what certain experts would feel. So there is two sides of the same reform. Some people feel that this is going to increase investment and so on. Others feel that we are basically steamrolling those reforms which usually face backlash. This should have been done in a more democratic manner. Now that is the gist of the article. Now let's move on to the next article. So the title for the second article is Reforms in Agriculture. The syllabus connection has been listed here. Please have a look. The issue is Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, and the dimension is related to the reforms in agriculture sector and its impact. So this article talks about the steps that have been launched under Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, which is in relation to the farm sector and the allied sector, agriculture and allied sectors, which we identify with farming, beekeeping, herding of animals, livestock, dairy, fisheries, and so on. For all these sectors, certain reforms have been launched, certain stimulus packages have been launched as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So this article basically talks about what these reforms are, and then it talks about certain kinds of impact these reforms are going to have on agriculture and allied sectors. So starting with the reforms that have been announced, we have the following reforms. Firstly, funds worth of about 1 lakh crores. About 1 lakh crores have been given to various organizations, so that these organizations will help boost infrastructure in the farming sector, especially farm gate infrastructure, especially formalizing the micro food enterprises and allied sectors, creating whatever small infrastructures or processing plants or cold chain infrastructure and so on, whatever is needed to improve the farm gate infrastructure at the farm level. Okay, for this about 1 lakh crores has been given by the government. In addition to this, deregulation of certain products from the Essential Commodities Act has been done. We will take some time to understand this. What is Essential Commodities Act? Essential Commodities Act is an act which has been launched by the different states and the center to make sure that there is no hoarding as such of essential commodities. Like for example, if you have onions, if you have potatoes and edible oils, these are basically essential for each and everyone in the country. Now if some traders hoard these quantities, like for example, if they start hoarding or storing these potatoes and onions in their godowns, so that when the prices increase because of higher demand, then they can release these products into the market and gain extra profit. Now this cannot be allowed, because these commodities are essential, so they cannot artificially hoard the products, and this hoarding of products has been prevented by Essential Commodities Act. And the main motive of Essential Commodities Act is to basically make sure that there is constant and continuous supply of these essential commodities to most people, if not all, in the country. Now deregulation of this has been done. I'll tell you what the reason is. Let's move forward. In addition to this, the government is also trying to improve the logistics sector. The logistics sector to make sure that the produce after harvesting will move easily to the APMC mandi, or get stored or gets transported to the processing plant, so that it will increase in its value from its raw material to the final product. So this logistics is being improved as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So these are the steps that have been taken. Now we'll move forward and see how this is going to change the agricultural sector as such. So firstly, we have said that we are going to deregulate the essential commodities sector. So why was this necessary? Why are we supposed to deregulate? If Essential Commodities Essential Commodities Act is basically trying to make sure that the supply of goods, supply of onions, potatoes, etc. is constant for everyone in the economy. So why should we deregulate it? Because of the following reason. Because of Essential Commodities Act, no trader was allowed to store these potatoes, onions for a longer period of time in a larger quantity. Because of this, no warehouses were developed, no storage infrastructure was developed, because there was no incentive to do so. Because these cannot be stored over a period of time. These were supposed to be in constant supply, and because of this, the logistics sectors in relation to these goods, be it warehouses, cold storages, or other kinds of infrastructure, have been underdeveloped. And this is not good, especially at this point of time, because we want to create more goods and services, more of these essential commodities, and also export it to outside. And in order to do so, we have to develop our storage infrastructure, for which we have to deregulate the Essential Commodities Act. So that is why we have deregulated the Essential Commodities Act, because of which we are going to have more supply of these cereals, pulses, edible oils, potatoes, and so on. People can now store these things in the godowns, for which we will develop our storage infrastructure, and then from storage we will also develop the processing infrastructure, so these goods can be processed, so this produce can be processed to final goods, and which can be sold in the domestic and the international market. So that is one important outcome of the deregulation of the Essential Commodities Act. The second point is that we've also removed the interstate barriers. Interstate barriers used to be there for the movement of agricultural produce from one state to another state. Now, because these interstate barriers have been removed, produce can move from one state to another state easily. This will lead to a good amount of price discovery. Otherwise, what happens is, if an agricultural commodity is produced in a particular state, it has to restrict itself to that particular state. And once it does that, it has to take whatever price that APMC Mandi in that particular state gives it. Instead of it, if I'm allowed to sell my produce even in other states also, what I'll do is, I'll first see where I'll get the better price. If I go to the APMC Mandi in my own state, will I get more money? Or if I go to the APMC Mandi in the neighboring state, will I get more money? If it is possible for me to get more money in the neighboring state, I will certainly go there and give my produce there and get the money. So this is going to increase the price discovery in the economy. This is an important outcome of another reform that has been taken. In addition to this, like I've mentioned, 1 lakh crores has been given to support the different kinds of logistics, warehouses, allied sectors like fisheries, dairy, livestock, farmers, and so on. So all these things are going to receive a boost, and this will improve the agriculture in the Indian economy. This is what the gist of the article is. Now let's move on to the next article. So the title for the next article is, how will the COVID-19 relief for MSMEs help? The syllabus connection has been listed here for your benefit. Please have a look. The issue is again ABA, and the dimension is related to the first tranche of measures under ABA and its possible benefits, especially for the MSMEs. So this article is related to the measures that have been announced by the central government in order to address the issues of working capital of MSMEs, which is one part of this first tranche of measures. In addition to MSMEs, this also tries to infuse capital into NBFC sector and also to the discoms or the power discoms basically. So this is the essence of the article, and we will see the different proposals under this particular first tranche of the economic reforms that have been launched as a part of the ABA or Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So what are the proposals which are in relation to the MSMEs as such? So Firstly, about 3 lakh crore of collateral-free loans to MSMEs will be guaranteed by the center to the banks. Now the banks will be able to give loans to these MSME people in a better manner, in a free manner, without fearing the repayment of the debt, because the central government is also giving a partial credit guarantee scheme. which is to say that if the person or if the MSME firm has taken money from the bank and it has not been able to pay because of certain reasons, whatever the reasons may be, the government will chip in. The government will cover some of the losses that have been incurred by the banks. Now, this creation of this kind of environment is going to assure the banks about constant repayment, as in it is going to be sure about the loan it has given, that it is going to get the money back and it is not going to turn into an NPA. So this basically makes sure that the banks will lend more to the MSME sector, and this will make sure that the MSME sectors perform well, they produce more goods and services, and thus generating the economic activity. In addition to this, MSME sector has been given a small jolt by basically changing the definition of what an MSME is. So previously we used to define MSMEs based on turnover and so on. Now basically we are using two components. One is the investment component and the other is the turnover component. Using both these criteria, we are differentiating between MSMEs as micro MSME, small MSME and medium MSME. Like for example, if there is an MSME unit which has up to 1 crore of investment and has 5 crores of turnover, then it is considered as micro. And similarly, you have certain figures for small, and then you have different figures for medium enterprises. So this change of what an MSME, which is change of classification of MSMEs, is also going to help the sector. Now, what will be the benefits of such a reorganization, such a kind of measures that have been taken? Like for example, collateral free loans have been given, partial credit guarantee scheme has been given, the definition of MSMEs has been changed. So what is the outcome of this kind of changes that the government is basically launching? Firstly, all those enterprises which are affected by the lockdown are going to have some amount of working capital which they can receive from the banks. They can go to the bank even without collateral. They will be able to draw some money from the banks, and this will help them continue their operations and start producing as much as possible. And next to this, the change in definition of MSMEs, is going to increase the investment in this particular sector, is what this article believes. Now this is in relation to MSMEs. In addition to MSMEs, under the first tranche of economic reforms, we also have certain measures in relation to non-banking financial corporations. Non-banking financial corporations include housing finance companies, microfinance institutions, and so on, right? So what are the steps that have been taken in relation to these NBFCs? Firstly, about 30,000 crore of special liquidity scheme has been launched by the government. This is going to infuse liquidity into these NBFCs so that these NBFCs will be able to lend more. And in addition to this, they will be able to raise capital. They will be able to raise capital from the primary and the secondary market under the new rules, and this is also going to increase the infusion of capital into these NBFCs. So overall, NBFCs are going to become cash rich, and then they can start revamping their activities. They can start rejuvenating their activities. So this is also going to boost the NBFCs. Now, what are the steps that have been taken in relation to the power discoms? Power discoms are basically going through a stress right now because they are supplying power all the time, but which is all right, but there is no payment of money as such. All the industries have been shut down. People do not have money in their hands and so on, so they are not able to pay back their electricity bills as such. So this is creating a stress in the electricity discoms, because they are supposed to pay the money. They are supposed to pay the money back to the transmission companies and the generation companies. They are not getting any money, but they are supposed to pay the money to these people, which are transmission companies and generation companies. In order to solve this problem, these power discoms also have been given some money. About 90,000 crores have been infused into the Power Finance Corporation, and this is going to take care of the discom debt to an extent. This is something else that has been pointed out by the government. So this pointed out by the article. So the article started out by talking about MSMEs and the measures in relation to MSMEs. Then it moved forward and talked about the steps in relation to NBFCs. Then it moved forward and talked about discoms. And last but not the least, this article talks about the measures that have been taken for the common man. So for the common man, in relation to Provident Fund, the government has said that it is going to pay about 25% of the Provident Fund of certain people. So if a salaried employee earns about 15,000 or less than 15,000 rupees per month, from the Provident Fund, whatever he is supposed to pay into the Provident Fund from his salary, the government is going to pay about 1/4 of it, as in 25% of the Provident Fund contribution is going to be paid by the government. That is the first measure. In addition to this, the TDS, or the tax deduction at source, has been reduced by 25%, for a lot of people, and this is going to increase the disposable income in the hands of people as such. So these are all the steps that have been taken by the government, and the hope is that this is going to improve the economic activity. Now this is the gist of the article. Let's move on to the next article. So the title of the present article is Traditional Belief and Today's Science. The syllabus is listed here for your benefit. The issue is related to COVID-19 and the dimension is related to the traditional medicines and practices to deal with COVID-19. So what does this article say? This article basically argues that the adaptive mechanisms developed by various species to enhance their immunity in the polluted waters of Ganga can be used to treat COVID-19. What this actually means, we will see in detail, but first we will look at some basic context or the highlight of the present article. So the Union Minister in charge of National Mission for Clean Ganga, or NMCG, he has recently requested ICMR. So what was this request? He requested ICMR to see if Ganga Jal can be used as a cure of COVID-19. That is one point. And the second point is Ministry of Ayush is basically has been asked to conduct clinical trials to assess if certain herbs like ashwagandha can be used to cure COVID-19. So as we all know, Ayurveda is basically an ancient science in India, and ashwagandha is an important herb of Ayurveda. And the Ministry of Ayush has been asked if this ashwagandha can be used to treat COVID-19. So what has led us to the belief that these herbs or Ganga water can be used to solve our problems? We can understand this in depth in the following manner. As we all know, Ganga basically originates in the Himalayas and then it flows through several states, during which it gets worshipped. People bath in these rivers, people take this water to do their puja in their homes, and industries dump their pollutants into this river. A lot of things are related to Ganga as such. Ganga is a highly polluted river, but since the lockdown has started, pollution in Ganga has decreased by leaps and bounds. But all that set aside, what gives Ganga water the capacity to solve COVID-19? The answer is in the following way. So Ganga water is basically consisting of very strong microbials. Like for example, it has very strong bacteria and viruses which can affect anybody. This Ganga water has been polluted by the people around it and the industries around it to such an extent that it is a breeding ground of several bacteria and viruses, and it has been so for the past 2 or 3 decades. Now in this context, if you see the organisms in Ganga, let's say you have dolphins in Ganga, you have gharials in Ganga, you also have some other organisms, fishes, etc. in Ganga. Now these organisms basically develop antibodies which help them fight these bacteria. Right? So Ganga consists of a lot of bacteria, especially antimicrobial resistant bacteria, which is very stubborn. And in response to this kind of bacteria, the organisms inside Ganga water have basically developed a kind of immunity which can solve or fight against this antimicrobial resistant bacteria. So which is to say, we are basically saying that these organisms have evolved in such a way, these organisms in Ganga, be it fish or amphibians, gharials or dolphins, they have evolved in such a way that they are quite resistant to this bacteria or virus and so on. And why is that so? This is because they develop something called as miniaturized antibodies in their body. So these miniaturized antibodies which these organisms have, they help them fight against any kind of diseases, any kind of resistant diseases. In such a situation, this gives us an opportunity to harvest these miniaturized antibodies from these dolphins and gharials and see if they can help us solve our COVID problem. So that is one way to look at it. And the second point is in relation to ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is a traditional herb. It has been used in villages and in Ayurveda for quite some time, and and this is now going through clinical trials. The Ministry of Ayush has been asked to conduct some research on ashwagandha and see if it has enough properties to deal with COVID-19. So these are the two important points under this particular article. What the essence of this is basically the usage of traditional knowledge in the form of ashwagandha, or the usage of Ganga water and the organisms in Ganga water, the fish and amphibians in Ganga water, and see if we can develop a vaccine or if we can develop a medicine which can help us fight COVID-19. So the title of the last article for our discussion is, Will Migrants Benefit from the Centre's Measures? The syllabus connection has been listed here for your benefit. Please have a look. The issue is related to COVID-19 lockdown, and the dimension is the effects of lockdown on migrant workers. So this article basically talks about migrant workers and the problems they have been facing, and then it moves forward and talks about the steps that have been announced for the migrant workers, street vendors and small farmers by the government. So these are the two things this article talks about. So firstly, why and how migrant workers have suffered during the lockdown. Why did they suffer? So if you look at the number of people, number of workers that we have, and according to National Sample Survey Organization, which we commonly call as NSSO, it comes under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, by the way. NSSO comes under MOSPI. So this NSSO conducted a survey, and in this survey it has found that 1.49 crore urban workers are there who had vulnerable jobs like street vendors, etc., construction jobs, etc., etc. You have around 1.49 to 1.5 crore of urban workers are there, and out of these people, out of these vulnerable urban workers, about 81 lakh of them are migrant workers, which is to say nearly 80 lakhs or more than 60 to 70% of the vulnerable urban workers are migrants. Now, once the lockdown has started, these urban workers have lost their jobs. So these migrant workers have become stranded due to the lockdown. The segments of these populace, especially the migrant workers, have been affected, and because of lockdown, they have increased. They have witnessed lots of urban unemployment, and now they can't go home because there was no transportation infrastructure. Neither is there any buses or other kinds of infrastructure, transportation wise, which would allow them to go back home. So they could not go back home. So these people were housed under the shelter facilities by different states, but the states have not been able to provide good food and other sanitation for these people to live a decent living. So what these migrant workers have started doing was they started taking recourse to personal transportation. One thing, they've also started walking long distances home, and they have started doing these kinds of things until Shramik trains have come up recently. So what I'm trying to point out is that these urban workers have faced a lot of problems because of the lockdown, and in order to ease their life, the government has come up with several measures. That is what this article talks about. So one measure is the government has advised the states, the central government has advised the states to provide work to these migrant workers, to provide a scheme to provide work for these migrant workers, especially in monsoon season, and also to provide jobs in plantation, horticulture, livestock related work. So the states have been asked to create employment for these migrant workers who are stranded in urban areas and who have went back home. So those migrant workers who have gone back home, they are supposed to be subsumed under Manrega so that they can derive employment. In addition to this, to take care of their food security, the government has promised a free supply of 5 kg of food grain per person, and also 1 kg of chana, which basically gives protein, per family. And in addition to this, One Nation, One Ration card scheme will be enhanced by ensuring national portability by 2020 August, and we will make sure that these migrant workers will be able to access food grains in whichever state they are. So that kind of upgradation of One Nation, One Ration card scheme is being done. In addition to this, some steps were taken in relation to PM Awas Yojana, in relation to the street vendors, in relation to the refinancing capacity of NABARD, in order to make sure that there are enough provisions to provide employment for migrant workers, to take care of food security of migrant workers, to take care of their nutritional security, and more importantly, their health security and income security, right? So these are the steps that have been taken by the government, and how this actually plays out on the grassroots level or at the field level is waited to be seen. is waited to be seen because the steps have been launched only recently. So this should be the discussion for the day. Thank you for your participation. We'll meet again.